I always feel that sound in cinema is more often than not something that's thought of as needing to be extremely functional or something considered somewhat of an afterthought. The prevailing attitude that is felt in a lot of movies is let's focus on the images, the sound we add in post. And this is not necessarily a bad thing. One part of the artistic process can be done first and then the other be added. A painter may do the contour first, then add color and make a great painting. Same goes for a musician that writes a melody and then has someone else do the arrangement and harmony for it. Nevertheless, I can't help but feel that this attitude in cinema of thinking the sound as less than the image ends up being a loss of opportunity, making the audible dimension feel more like an annex to what is being showcased than an actual part of the whole. Not to say that someone would outright state that sound is inferior to image in cinema, but besides direct dialogue, all the elements that are normally talked about when you discuss a movie are first and foremost imagistic, and you can see it in video essays. Most talk mainly about the visual aspect and then add a comment or two about the soundtrack and other auricular features, making these remarks about sound feel more like something that was listed as a must-speak on a script and that you have to do, but as a chore, as an obligation. And even though I myself have almost solely worked with sound my whole life, I can't say I'm not guilty of the same sins when discussing a movie. After all, most humans have the gift of sight, and it is our primary sense to interact with the world. So it makes sense that seeing should be the go-to protagonist of a multisensory experience such as cinema, which explains why the visual part is normally the most thought of when thinking about how to present a narrative in this art. However, there are some movies that incorporate sound not only as a functional building block of itself, but also as an integral part of not only the narrative, but the whole symbolic dimension of the themes being presented. And today, I want to talk about a work that does this like few I've seen and heard: Blowout. Blowout is a 1981 movie by director Brian De Palma that tells the story of Jack, a sound technician that used to work for the government, handling wires and transmission in operations to bust crooked cops and officials. However, a mistake of his makes an undercover agent be discovered and killed by the bad guys. He then steps away from this duty and starts working as a sound designer for low-budget movies in Philadelphia. Jack needs to record new sounds for the movie Co-Ed Frenzy, in which he's working on, because various sounds in it need to be substituted. In particular, the scream of the actress is terrible, but also ambient sounds such as wind are needed. And so, one fateful night while recording this movie, Jack witnesses an accident when a tire blowout happens and a car falls into a creek. He rescues a girl but is unable to save the other passenger. From that point on, the story develops as a conspiracy investigation, as the victim of the so-called accident was an important politician, and Jack finds loose ends in his recordings of the occurrence. That makes him question it. Any resemblance to the JFK story is no mere coincidence, as De Palma was obsessed with this conspiracy. From this brief summary, one can already see that sound will play a key role in the story, not only as a plot advancing element, but also as something that is integral to the identity of our protagonist. What you might not have noticed, however, is the theme that will be central, one of the central focus of the movie: the uncovering of truth and the construction of false narratives, the juxtaposition of what's true and what is fake. And a movie seems like a very appropriate way to tackle such a theme, since a movie is, in a way, a collection of truths bound together in a line, invented form to showcase a story. And that building of lies permeates every ounce of this movie. Sally, the girl that Jack rescues, for example, is a makeup artist, someone whose job is to cover up people and present a fabricated look that hides the true face of the client. So there are many things in this movie that do an amazing job at showcasing its ideas. So much so that I initially had the intention of making an installment of the scene that stuck with me about Blowout, something that might come in the future. However, after re-watching the movie, I realized that I had to make a video speaking only about the sound of Blowout. Not only for the reasons I've already listed, but because its use is just genius. From the moment the movie starts, it keeps you on your toes as to what is happening. Right after the MGM intro, the Filmways logo appears, with this sound happening, which at first I thought was the sound of the intro, only to reveal itself as being a suspenseful beating of a heart used in the slasher movie we are watching. And if you watch Blowout blindly, as I did when I first watched it, you might as well think you will be watching a slasher movie until it cuts to a laughing John Travolta in the editing studio. You've been deceived by the sounds and the images, and this is just the beginning of the movie. The credits of the movie roll at the beginning, being punctuated by various sounds, which gives you spoilers as you later realize. But that goes constantly telling you a message: pay attention to the sound. A message so important De Palma put the word sound in the movie poster. We cut to the recording studio, a lot of mixing tapes alongside a 3V transmission. Again, pay attention to the sound, which again gives you a spoiler, as when the governor is shown on TV, you hear a blowout noise, which at first you will not connect to anything, but that when the accident happens, if you paid attention, you don't have to wait for the review of who was in the car. Speaking of the accident, the scene right before it feels like De Palma telling the audience, okay, for the last time, you little shit, listen to the fucking sounds. Since now, the sound, through the use of position panning, going left and right, dictates where Travolta will point his mic to, sound guiding image, and therefore the reveal of what is happening. The sound will be what reveals the truth, or hide it. And speaking of sounds that reveal fakery, when the accident occurs and the car falls in the water, Jack has to break the glass to rescue Sally. And when he does that, there's a big sound of glass being smashed, something that would not happen to that degree if made underwater. That got me thinking something was off on that incident. And when you find out all the conspiracy behind the crash, you can correlate a faked sound being used on a faked incident. This is but a breakdown of the first scenes of the movie, but this use of sound permeates the whole hour and 45 minutes of it, in numerous examples, such as how the main antagonist tricks our protagonists, making them think he is a trusted reporter that will help them uncover the conspiracy by faking his voice to sound like a reporter. And since Sally doesn't know how he looks, but knows how he sounds, she gets fooled by the villain. Again, the faking of sound going against the ones who want to show the true sound to the world. And this ethos even extends to the brilliant soundtrack by Pino Donaggio, which is a soundtrack that does not hide itself, trying to blend in and go unnoticed with the images, but that puts itself very in your face, or better said, in your ears, to grab your attention and make you acknowledge that sound. The best instance of the hearing aspect in this movie is, however, in its ending, but to talk about it I will need to go pretty heavily into spoilers, which will not ruin your experience, but that I feel I need to warn you about. So spoilers from now on. Our protagonists arrange the meeting with the reporter, but wanting to safeguard a possible double-crossing by the newsman, Jack wires Sally for the meeting. While Sally and the bad guy who is behind the conspiracy but is disguised as a journalist talk, Jack notices something is up and rushes to try and meet them. But they are nowhere to be seen, and so Jack has to rely on his ears and the wire to try to find out where they are. And when he does in a subway station where they are getting on a train, he shouts for Sally, but the loud subway noises prevent her from hearing his screams. He used sound to fight the conspirator, but he fought back on the same currency. He chases them and they end up in a celebration, a parade, where once again the villain is protected by the sound, this time by the fireworks going wild. However, Sally manages to scream, which makes Jack notice her. Sound came through for him, he could spot her. But when he starts drawing close to her, only the soundtrack remains. All other sound is eliminated, gone. The hope and truth that sound gave disappears completely as Sally is dead. And after Jack finishes the bad guy, all he has left is the sound of her scream, recorded through the wire. A recording he puts as the scream he needed for his cheap movie. Defeated, Jack gets the sound of truth and builds himself a lie out of it. What a great use of sound, making it represent the themes and build the narrative. What a movie. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you got here. That will help me a lot. And until the next one.